I'm afraid I did not take into consideration the size of the mosquitoes here. Oh well. The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett is an adult fantasy mystery and the first book in the Shadow of the Leviathan series. It was published on February 6th by Del Rey Books, and the standard hardcover edition spans 413 pages. In this video, we'll go through the basic setup for this story, as well as my impressions after reading it. How I rate fantasy books in particular is by evaluating 5 separate criteria, and then my overall rating is the average of those 5, which are world building, character development, plot, writing style, and enjoyment. And before I start talking specifics, you need to know that I have absolutely no clue how to properly pronounce any of the names in this book, so I will pronounce them the way I read them in my head, and if I mess up, please feel free to correct me in the comments below. Now, whenever I do spoiler-free reviews, I usually avoid talking specifics about the world and even the plot. I mostly prefer to stick to personal impressions of those, but in this case, I'm gonna make an exception because, well, I want to. The story is set in a fictional world in the Empire of Khanum, which, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, reminds me very much of the Ottoman word Khanum, meaning lady or rather Muslim lady. Not sure that's relevant. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with anything, but I just thought of it, and now you got to hear it too. Moving on. Let me begin by saying that this world was fascinating. Unfortunately, there was no map in the book and I couldn't find one on the internet, so I made one myself. It is only based on what I read and remember from the books, my imagination, and my very limited map-making skills, so please take it with a grain of salt because I am sure it lacks tons of context. But I do feel pretty good about its relative accuracy for the purposes of the story contained in this book. So, this is how I saw the Empire. On its eastern side, it is bordered by a sea full of what the author refers to as leviathans. But don't imagine whales, because in this particular case, we're talking about a different type of gigantic monstrous creatures. Each wet season, those creatures are trying to break through the seawall, which protects the Empire from them, and the legionnaires and engineers stationed there fight desperately to stop them, because if they did manage to break through, it would mean certain destruction. There are 2 more prominent walls within the Empire, making it, quote, a tremendous spoked wheel within a spoked wheel, with the Empire's curving walls acting as the felloes and the roads acting as the spokes. The Empire is split in 3 rings by its 3 walls. The innermost, called the third ring, which contains the capital and the safest lands, the middle one, called the second ring, and the outermost one, which is called the outer ring, and is the most dangerous place in the Empire. Mind you, there are supposed to be a ton of irrigation canals running through the map, as well as way more roads, but unfortunately, I am not skilled enough to be able to add those without making the whole thing overcrowded and messy. So I added the link to the project where I created the map to the video description and made it possible to clone and edit it in case you want to play around with it and make it better. I have also added the link to the map itself if you would like to use it while reading, though again, please remember that this is in no way official and just my interpretation of the text. Sorry for this tangent. One of the most distinguishing qualities of this world is the use of what is essentially magical bioengineering to manipulate and mutate life to serve different purposes. As a result, this world is full of very impressive human and non-human alterations, as well as tons of equally as impressive disease and contagion, making it feel post-apocalyptic even though it technically isn't. This gave an uncanny, almost alien feel to the whole place, which left me unsettled from the very beginning. Even the murder that is being investigated utilizes this, let's call it magic system, in a rather gruesome, body horror-esque way, which I surprisingly quite liked. The story is told from a first-person point of view by one of our protagonists, Dinios Cole, who is an assistant to the Canton investigator Anna de Labra, and I found the contrast between the personalities of those two, as well as the beauty of their interactions, to be one of the strongest assets of this book. He is serious, respectful, and by the book in almost every aspect you can imagine, and she is chaotic, brilliant, and very, very quirky. For example, one of the things I found most interesting about her was her intolerance to overstimulation, which is why she avoids the outside and wears blindfold most of the time. Both of them have secrets which are partially unveiled through the course of the story, and both of them were very, very likable. The story starts in Daratana Canton, where a high-ranking engineer is murdered in a very conspicuous mansion, and our main characters are tasked with investigating it. The story later grows and sort of migrates to Talagrai City and Tala Canton. I will stop with the details here because I don't want to spoil anything, though I am a little afraid that my clumsy descriptions don't do this world nor this story justice whatsoever. If I can summarize the whole thing, we have a Sherlock Holmes-like mystery set in a very creepy and dangerous world and investigated by two of the most fascinating individuals I can think of. So when it comes to world building and character development, I give this book 5 stars. Now, when it comes to the plot, we have the obvious murder investigation, which takes center stage. But what I found most intriguing and what fueled my curiosity, not just for this book, but for the series at large, were the bigger political, historical, and potentially apocalyptic implications related to the government, the organized crime, and the aforementioned Leviathans. Even the way that the Empire was allegedly forged, which was only briefly mentioned, seemed a little odd to me, especially given one particular detail about the Leviathan's physiology, which was again mentioned only twice and kind of in passing, but it was very creepy. I will admit that at the end, the reveals relative specifically to the murder mystery felt a little obvious to me and therefore kind of underwhelming, though again, it might just be me. On the other hand, as I just droned on and on about, I was really gripped by the bigger picture and the potential it offers, so I gave the plot 4 stars. Now, when it comes to the writing style, I wasn't particularly impressed, and mind you, there was nothing wrong with the author's writing, it just wasn't anything worth writing home about. In a just world, I'd be in jail for this stupid pun. That said, there were still quite a few memorable quotes, one of which still echoes in my mind every now and again. And we get some say in what kind of person we are then. We do not pop out of a mold. We change. We self-assemble. I think that's one of the most beautiful truths ever told, because we don't always like who we are, and it's nice to know that it doesn't have to be permanent. I gave the writing style 3 to 3.5 stars. And now for enjoyment. I absolutely loved reading this. It was delightfully engaging from the very first page with the strange setting all the way till the end with the multiple reveals, both relative to the murder mystery and to the bigger picture as a whole. Each time I picked this book up, I did it gladly, and each time I had to put it down, I was looking forward to the next time I would open it. So here I am giving definite 5 stars. And therefore my overall rating is 4.5 stars, and I definitely recommend this book. If you have interest in either murder mysteries or fantasy, this will appeal to you. It offers multiple opportunities for speculation and consideration without being overly complex. Simply a good time. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and please let me know your impressions of the book if you've read it, or if you're planning on reading it, in the comments down below. I also welcome anyone who would like to engage in some spoilery discussion, whether to compare theories or simply nitpick things, but I will only ask you to put a very clear spoiler warning in the beginning of the comment. Thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to see some of my other book reviews and opinions, check out this playlist. Bye.